Yes, ladies and gentlemen, our dear students, I would like to welcome you to lesson 2, and we are looking at the anatomy of the rat. Remember, in the first lesson we looked at different terminologies that we use in dissection: anterior, posterior, dorsal, ventral, lateral, proximal, and so on. I hope that you went through those terms and now you are familiar with them, because we are going to continue using them. We also looked at classification of the rat, and we looked at reasons why they belong to different taxa, from kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, up to species. So I hope you have also been able to master different taxa where the rat belongs, and also the reasons why organisms in that taxa are distinguished from the rest. Well, that's great. So in this particular topic, in this lesson, we are going to proceed with external anatomy, where we shall look at different body parts of the rat. And what I would want you to pay keen attention to is the spellings of these parts, the location of these parts, the description, how they are, their number, if there are two, a pair, if there's one, and so on, their numbers, but also their functions. Which function do they perform in the body of the rat? So that's what I want you to pay attention to as we move through this lesson. So when you look at this animal, you will realize that there are three major parts, but of course, within those three major parts, there are also attached other appendages or other parts. So the parts we are talking about are the head, the neck, and the trunk. So, but also we have the tail, the anus, the limbs, the abdomen, the thorax, the mouth, the ears, the eyes, and so on. And we are going to look at these parts one by one as we proceed. So we said that there are three major parts, that is the head, the neck, and the trunk. Yeah, the head, the neck, and the trunk. So, but the whole body is covered with the skin, and that skin has fur or hairs. So let's start with the skin. We said that the skin already has fur, and what is the major function of the skin? The major function of the skin, or the major function of the fur? Let's start from there. The major function of the fur to the body, or the hairs. So the hairs are basically used to insulate the body of an animal against heat loss. To insulate the body of an animal against what? Heat loss. Therefore, to maintain a relatively constant body temperature of the animal. So that's the function of the hairs that you see in the bodies of the mammals. Okay, so let's start with the head. One of the key parts of the body of the rat is the head. And how do we describe the head when you look at it critically? What can you say about it in terms of its shape? So when you look at it critically, what do you identify? Are you seeing it like this? What do we talk? What do we say? What is that? What else do you see from it? Interact with your animal and see how does the head look like. I can see that it is smaller at the tip and expanded behind. It forms some sort of triangle, or a cone. So we can say basically that the head tapers anteriorly. It's pointed anteriorly, where the mouth is small and bounded by soft upper and lower lips, and broad anteriorly. Therefore, it is cone-shaped. So the head is pointed anteriorly and broad posteriorly and forms a cone shape. Do you think that is of any advantage? We said that every structure that you see in an organism and the shape it adopts is a significance. It has a contribution to the survival of an organism. So that cone shape, that pointed shape of the head of the rat gives the animal a streamlined shape which helps it to move easily without much interference from the air or in the environment as it moves. So it maintains a streamlined shape, just like you see cars, small cars. They are pointed in front, then behind is a little bit bigger. So that is how to keep it, to enable it to penetrate through, yeah, and minimize air resistance as they move. So that is the advantage of that shape. Also during burrowing, it's easier for it to penetrate through the burrows and minimize air resistance. Okay, so when you look at the head critically, realize there are many parts, but majorly there are three major parts we want to look at: the eyes, the ears, and the nostrils. Are you able to identify these parts to point out that this is the head, this is the eye, this is the ear, these are the nostrils? If yes, then you're good. If not, then you can also identify those parts. So when you look at the head position and structure, let's start with the eyes. We want to start with the eye, the position and the structure. Where are they located? If somebody asks you, having looked at that picture you're seeing, what can you say about the location of the eyes? So, well, you can say probably, what do you say? The eyes are located on top of the head, but on the sides. So biologically, using our terms, what do we say? The eyes are dorsolaterally located on the head. They are dorsolaterally located on the head. What about their shape? Are you able to see that shape? You can see that they are round. Are they rounded, generally round? Yes, they are generally round. Then what else do you see from the eyes? I can see that there are some eyelids. There are some eyelids, some flaps of the skin that are folded below the eye and up that can be closed. Those are called eyelids. Okay, that is all correct. In case you have seen that, that is all description. These answers don't come from far. You just look at this, the structure, and you should be able to give the description, to identify the structure and give the description accordingly. So the eyes are located dorsolaterally on the head, and then they are two. They are a pair. The eyes are two, so we say they are a pair. Yes, of generally small and rounded shaped, and they have two flaps of skin called the eyelids. Yes, that are used for cleaning the eyes, but also for closing them and opening. And then we have the significance of the eye structure to the position. So we say that the position gives we say they are dorsolaterally located. Is that significant? Is that important? Yes. So this one gives the animal a wide field of view in the habitat, helping it to detect the food, the prey, but also to detect the enemies, the predators. Then it has what we call the nictitating membrane. That can be moved across the eyelids, the eyes, to wash them away to wash the foreign particles away from the eyes. So the nictitating membrane is that white, that colorless, membranous piece of skin below the eyes that moves upwards to close the eye and to wash it off in case there are foreign bodies falling onto it. Then we have the eyelashes. The eyelashes are hair-like structures which are surrounding the eye, and those ones protect the eye from entry of dust and other small insects. Then we also have the movable eyelids, that piece flaps of skin that close and open the eye, and those ones are used majorly for protection, for closing an opening of the eyes. And then we have another part located on the head called the ear lobes. So what you are able to see is the external ear, what we call the pinna, the external ears. One is the pinna and many are the pinna. So those are the external ears. You cannot see the inner ears external when you are looking at it from outside. So but what you can see from out is what we want to look at now in detail. So when you look at them critically, what do you see? You can describe them a little bit more. You realize that they are dorsolaterally located as well on the head, just like the eyes. They are located on the top and on the sides of the head, but slightly behind the eyes. So we can say posterior and or behind the eyes. And what is the main function of those external ears? Is to trap the sound waves from a wider area of the environment. That's why they are large. They are large in order to trap sound waves from a wider area of the environment. So we could say that the rats are well equipped with a good enlarged hearing apparatus. And then when you look at them critically, you realize they are large, they look like funnels. They are funnel shaped. And then when you try to grab them, you realize they are flexible. And then they are prominent, they are large. And then they have blood vessels that run around them, prominent blood vessels on the inner surface. And what is the significance of those blood vessels is to enable heat loss. Yeah, to enable heat loss. They dilate and heat can be lost from the surface of the ear, from the blood through the surface of the ear to the outside, and the body is cooled. And then also they have hairs that surround them, but usually the hair is scanty. It is not as thick as the rest of the body, and the reason is to enable the heat loss. Yeah, to enable heat to be lost easily. Where hair is more thick is to insulate the body against heat loss. Where it is scanty is to enable heat loss, but also to maximize the collection of sound. But when you look at the inner part of the ear, you also realize that that inner part has some hairs that trap the dust and other foreign bodies that may want to enter into the inner part of the ear, yeah, which may be more delicate. So that is great. So we can move on to the next part of the ears. We want to look at now the significance. We said they are large to collect sound waves from the wider area of the environment. That is the reason why they are large. And then they are funnel shaped. They are like funnels to trap more sound waves via the auditory canal to the middle ear. And then they are flexible to be easily turned in all directions to trap sound waves. And then the prominent blood vessels for easy radiation of heat when it is hot, to lose heat easily. And then they are covered with the short scanty hair to allow loss of heat by radiation of the heat when it is hot. And then the inner surface bears a relatively longer hair to prevent the foreign particles from entering into the inner ear, which is more delicate. So those are the significances of the structure of the ear that we have talked about. Yes, great. I hope you can now describe the structure of the ear, but also give the significance of that structure. Okay, that's great. Let's look at another part, the mouth. Now when you look at the mouth critically, you realize that the mouth is located below the head, so we can say it is ventral, anteriorly located in front, and below the head, and particularly below the nostrils. That is where you can find the mouth of the rat. And is that advantageous to have the head below the nostril. Yes, it is. For easy ingestion of food, for easy taking in of food, but because usually its food is collected from ground, from below. Yeah, it either digs the tunnels, eats the groundnuts, the cassava from down. So the mouth, imagine if the mouth was located on top, it would be so difficult for it to feed. So that location of the mouth is very significant for easy ingestion of food, for easy grabbing, easy collecting of the food and taking in. And then let's describe that mouth much more. When you look at it critically, you realize that the mouth is triangular in shape, and the lower lip is movable and shorter. So it's movable and shorter. The shortness enables it to expose the lower teeth, the incisors. Then the upper lip is fixed and longer, but is longitudinally divided into two halves or two parts by a cleft, exposing the upper incisors clearly. Yes. So the upper lip is also, much as it is long, but it is divided into two, meaning there is a gap through which you can see the incisor teeth. The lower lip is shorter, so the teeth are exposed. So generally here, the modification of the lips is to enable the teeth to be exposed. Yes, we shall later on see why the teeth should be exposed. Then we have a part called the diastema, that gap where there is no teeth, which separates the freshly ingested food from food that has been chewed. So the diastema is located between the incisors and the premolars, as you can see, and is a good gap that enables separation of the food and also movement of the tongue in and about for collecting of the food. The lowest incisors are longer and curved, and they are chisel-shaped, and they are hard. They are long, curved, chisel-shaped, and hard. We shall see why. Then the upper incisors are shorter, curved inwards, and also chisel-shaped. So of the two incisors, you can be told to differentiate the two. All of them are chisel-shaped. They are all sharp, but the difference is that the lower ones are longer than the upper ones. What are the adaptations of the lips to their functions? We have talked about the lips. So we want to see why they have such a unique structure. So when you look at the lips, you realize that the lower lip is shorter, and this exposes the incisors for easy gnawing of the food materials. So it is shorter to expose the incisor teeth for easy cutting of the food materials and biting. Then the lower lip is still movable to prevent the ingested food from falling out of the mouth. So when it is chewing, you realize that the lower lip keeps on moving to collect the food, to prevent it from falling. Then the upper lip is longer, usually, to prevent the ingested food from falling out of the mouth as well. And then the upper lip is also suspended into two halves by a cleft, exposing the upper incisors for easy gnawing of the food material as well. So when we talk about exposure of the incisor teeth, we are favoring the cutting of the food. Yes. Then the upper lip, similarly, is folded inwards in the diastema to separate the freshly ingested food, yeah, from that food that has been entered into the body. So generally, the location, the shape, and the appearance of the lips has a function to do with the enabling easy ingestion of the food, easy cutting and ingestion of the food. The location, the size, the shape of the teeth, the incisor teeth, is also to enable the gnawing of the food, the cutting of the food. Yeah, remember the food these organisms eat. They just cut them and cut it and then swallow. But also what is unique is that the teeth have the ability I mean, the lips have the ability to move, especially the lower lip, to prevent food from falling. That should be very interesting to see. Okay, so let's look at the teeth now. We realize that the teeth that we can see externally are the incisor teeth, and we see that the lower incisors are longer to interlock with the upper incisors for cutting or gnawing of the food. So when you look at the lower and the upper, when they close, they interlock together, and that enables cutting of the food to become easier. And then they are of course curved for the same purpose. They are chisel shaped with the upper edge for cutting food materials. They are very sharp, yeah. And then they are hard to, of course, to cut harder materials, yeah. They can eat even dry grass, even wood, yeah. So that is why their structure is like that. So let's look at another member, another structure there on the head called the tongue. Usually the tongue is found inside the mouth. You may have to open the mouth to be able to see, to expose the tongue. So how is it attached? Remember, the tongue of the toad is attached anteriorly and then free from the posterior side to flap out or to flip out to collect insects and the prey. This one here is that the attachment is like for the humans, and all the mammals are like that. So it's attached at the posterior end of the lower jaw in the pharyngeal region, and that's the same region where your tongue is also attached. What is the significance of that? For easy manipulation of the food into the bolus for easy swallowing. So when you are chewing, the tongue keeps on manipulating the food to enable it to swallow, to prepare it for swallowing. That's what happens. That's the function of the tongue of the rat as well. And then when you look at the tongue critically, you realize that it's long, it can be projected out, and then it is moist because of the saliva. It is rough because of the taste buds, and then elastic because of the muscles, flat and broad at the base. We are going to see why that is significant to the body. So let's look at here relating the structure of the tongue to its function. So we say that the tongue is long. Why is it long? For efficient manipulation of food into the bolus for swallowing. Then it is moist. Why is it moist? To soften the food for easy rolling of the food into the bolus. That's why it is moist. And what makes it moist is saliva. And then it is dorsoventrally flattened. What is the significance of that? To expose more taste buds for tasting. So it is flat so that more taste buds can be exposed to taste the food. And then it is broad at the base for firm attachment. Remember, it's attached to the pharyngeal area, the soft palate. Then it is flexible for efficient rolling of the food. And then it is rough for physical digestion and manipulation of the food. So generally, any feature you see from the tongue, its structure, its appearance has a biological significance, has an advantage to enable survival of the organism. And the same applies to man as well. Okay, let's look at the nostrils. So when you look at the organism, the rat, critically realize that the nostrils are located where? Where are the nostrils located? So you realize that the nostrils are located on the snout above the mouth. They are located anteriorly on the snout above the mouth. That's where they are located. Yes? And is that important? Yes, it's important. I told you every location, structure, and appearance of any structure of the organism has a biological significance. So the significance of that is that for efficient exchange of gases, of course, that's one of the functions of the nostrils. gaseous exchange. Also for easy detection of smell of the food. That's another function of the nostrils. The nostrils are equipped with chemoreceptors, those cells that enable detection of smell. And then for detecting chemical substances as well. And then when you are to describe the nose, what would you say when you look at it? You would see that the nostrils are small openings. Their inner lining is moist when you touch it. The inner part of the nose is moist, and they are comma shaped. When you look at them from the front, you see them as if they are like a comma. They are curved and small. They are comma shaped. So when you look at a structure, try to describe it in the natural way that you see it. Yeah, in the very way that you see that structure. Try to describe it using your own language. Yeah. Yes. So for the nose, you say they are small. The inner lining is moist, and they are comma shaped. You can still look at it more and give more descriptive terms. Then what is the significance for that, for what we have described? Yes, we said that they are small openings. So where are they open? They are open for free entry and exit of gases, free entry and exit of chemicals, and also it's an olfactory function for smell. It has an olfactory function. So that opening enables entry and exit of materials. Yeah. And then it's moist in the inner surface for efficient sense of smell. Yeah, remember, usually these chemicals are only detected when they're in solution. So when it is moist, they are able to dissolve, and the cells can easily detect, the chemoreceptors can easily detect them in solution. And then they are small to prevent entry of large particles that may obstruct the nose, our respiratory system. Okay, let's move on to the vibrissae or the whiskers. These one are usually those long hairy structures on the sides of the mouth and the nose, as you can see there. So when you look at the vibrissae, you realize that they are long, yes, longer than the ordinary hairs. They are stiff, they are thick, and they are usually arranged in rows. They are arranged in what? In rows. So let's relate that to the function. They are long to detect the changes at a distance. Yes, so they can even detect, in fact, they are used to judge the size of the hole they are supposed to burrow in. They are used to judge, so they can detect any change in the environment. Yeah, and then they are stiff and thick to prevent distortion. If they were thin and weak and flexible so much, it would be hard. They will be easily distorted, and they will not give accurate results, especially detecting the environment. And then yes, then let's look at the pair of forelimbs. We want to start with the forelimbs. The limbs are legs for this case. For us, the forelimbs are called arms. Hmm? For the forelimbs are the forelegs. So when you look at the forelegs, usually you realize that they are short and stout, and they have majorly one joint in the main limb axis. There is one main joint in the main limb axis. The other is in the phalanges, in the wrist area. But there is one main joint. And then it ends up into 4 digits. I told you these ones are pentadactyl limb system, but some limbs are modified for other function. Others are lost, others are modified, depending on the adaptation of the organism to its habitat. And then the fifth, of course, the fifth limb is reduced to a stub or a pollex, which is a short structure, as we shall see. The digits are joined with varying length. So all the digits are not the same length, just like in man as well. All our fingers are not the same length, but they have joints in them. So you can also feel the joints in yours and also feel the one of the animal in case you get it, and then try to see. And then the limbs are spread out The digits end in pointed, hard, long, curved claws with the 5 pads in the palm. There are 5 pads in the palm. Yes, and those pads are used usually to absorb shock when they are landing, but also to minimize friction when they are moving. When the rats are moving, they don't make noise. So those pads are very good for that, to minimize. They are like cushions for movement. Otherwise, if they didn't have pads, if they had hooves, for example, they would be making noise as they move, and they would be easily detected by the predators. So you can see your forelimbs there critically. So let's look at the adaptations of the forelimb. What the significance? The forelimb. They are short for easier digging of the burrows and absorbing shock. So during jumping, they are shorter to absorb shock as well, and also for digging the burrows. Short and stout. They are jointed for flexibility. Yeah, and then their digits are also jointed, and they are for flexibility. Similarly, the digits are free to increase the surface area for support during locomotion, and then they are long jointed curved claws for digging the burrows, but also for defense. If you catch a rat, it can squeeze, it can scratch you, and in the long run you can easily surrender with it. So they are also used for defense. Then they have soft pads for firm grip on the smooth surfaces, but also to reduce noise during movement. So that might alert the enemies. Yeah, yes, you know, when you are cautious of your life, even as you move, you don't want to be detected. I think that is some of your friends who escape from school. Do you know how they escape? Probably they have some adaptations like the rats. They don't want to move with the noise. They could easily be seen. Yeah? So we have looked at the forelimbs, and not much is in the hind limbs as well. It's quite similar, except there are few differences. So when you look at the hind limbs, you realize that ventrally they are attached at the posterior end of the trunk. That's why they are called hind limbs. They are attached behind the trunk. Their structure, they have 2 joints in the main body limb, and then they are long, massive. They have a massive thigh, which is very muscular, and then they end up into 5 digits, which are well developed. So they have some slight similarities with the forelimbs. For example, being muscular, having more joints, they have 2 joints, and having more toes, they have 5, as opposed to 4 in the forelimbs. So you should be keen to identify those differences. And you look at them, you can be able to identify. Yes. Then the jointed digits for varying length. Their digits also have varying length, and they have soft pads as well, and the hairless sole, as you can see. So the significance there are adaptations of the hind limbs to the survival of the organism. One is that they are long to reduce the propulsive force. They are long so as to produce the propulsive force for locomotion. And then they have a muscular or a massive thigh to generate a strong propulsive force during locomotion and pulling the soil behind during digging. So the forelimb is used for digging, a hind limb is used for kicking the soil backwards. So you should be having a strong muscle to be able to do that. So that's why the hind limb have muscles which are bigger compared to the forelimbs. And then their digits spread to provide the support during locomotion. They are jointed for firm grip and flexibility. Soft pads for reducing the noise during movement, and then long pointed hard claws for firm grip, but also for protection and defense against the enemies or predators. Then we look at the tail. We said the tail is located posteriorly. Yes, is located posteriorly. So the tail is dorsolaterally attached to the end of the trunk. Yeah, and when you're describing the tail, you say that it is broad at the base. At the point where it's attached to the trunk, the tail is bigger. And then it keeps on tapering, reducing in size posteriorly as you go to the last tip. And then it's long and hairy. It is flexible with scales which appear in rows. Their scales appear in rings. Then they also have the tail has scanty hair and hard and covered with some waxy sort of substance. Yes, that waterproofs it. So when you look at the tail critically, you realize it also serves the purpose, as we shall see shortly. Uh, its significance here. So we said it's long. The tail is long. Why is it long? For balancing the body during locomotion. So during locomotion, the tail balances. It's like the fifth leg. The rat can even stand. If you have seen it critically, it can stand, and the tail acts like the third leg. The two hind limbs are on the ground together with the tail, making it firm in case it wants to pick something up. Like you see the cats also and the dogs. The tail acts as a support for locomotion at the same time for standing, for firm grip. And then it is long enough for whipping the enemies. The tail can be used for whipping the enemies, for removing them away, the flies and so on. And then it is broad at the base for firm attachment to the trunk, and then tapering posteriorly for air resistance during locomotion. So when it is moving, it is easier to slip. It is tapering posteriorly. Even if you catch it, it can easily slip away from you. And then it is long to cover the whole body to chase away vectors from all parts of the body, mosquitoes, flies, and so on. Long to provide support for locomotion, especially on elevated, to elevate the head area, the upper part of the body, like we said before. It can stand on the tail to elevate the upper part of the body. It is flexible for easy movement, to turn around. Scanty hair for sensitivity. That hair is for sensitivity, but also for heat loss. The hair is less to allow heat to be lost easily. Then scales to protect the tail against abrasion. Yeah, those scales there to protect the tail against damage. It is hard to inflict pain on the enemy during whipping. So if you are whipped, I pray that you don't get whipped by the rat's tail. Otherwise, you will feel some pain. And then it is covered by a greasy substance, making it waterproof to reduce water loss by evaporation. So those are some of the adaptations of the tail for the survival of the organism. So I want to thank you very much for being very good students and for following our lessons live. I want to leave you with some of the pictures from Ginger City, and I want to encourage you to continue keeping safe at home until it is safer for us to be at school. Those ones who are going to be at school, I encourage you to be very cautious about your life and do not be careless. Follow the guidelines. Don't be complacent, because it will be costly for you and for your school. Thank you very much. May God bless.